Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Thirsty Beagle podcast. I have a very special guest today. I'm joined on the telephone by Jeremy Danner, a brewer for Boulevard Brewing Company, and we're really excited to get a chance to talk to Jeremy today. And welcome to the podcast, Jeremy.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on there. It's really cool.
We have obviously Boulevard all throughout Oklahoma, and so I thought it'd be great to get you on and kind of get a feel for what you guys are doing up there in Kansas City. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your beer background, how long you've been at Boulevard, stuff like that.
Sure. I've been at Boulevard a little bit over 4.5 years now, and the way that I got into brewing is sort of the way that any beer geek kind of dreams of it. And when I say beer geek, I use that very affectionately. I'm a total beer geek.
Sure.
And I always will be. I actually got a job bartending in a beer bar, and that's really where I got turned on to beer. I'm from a fairly small town in Missouri that really didn't have a lot of exposure to craft beer. They have a couple Boulevard beers every once in a while, but until my 21st birthday, I really didn't know that beer could have this amazing, depth of flavor.
Right.
And on that day, I was like, holy cow, I really have to get into beer a lot more. And I ended up bartending at a brew pub in the Waldo neighborhood of Kansas City called 75th Street. I started bartending and serving there in November, and by June, I'd been asked to join the brew house team. It was kind of a crazy turn of events. After I got into brewing, I thought it'd be a good idea to go into brew pub management. I really wanted to learn how to run a brewery, and I was horrible at that. I'm a terrible manager. I am a worker bee.
Okay.
Through and through. There are people that are great managers, and there are people that turn into horrible people when they're managers, and I was one of those people. So I got out of that and started working at another bar in town, and at the same time I was volunteering my time at another brew pub, the Power Plant, which is now closed. That's in Parkville, Missouri, and I got a part-time job working on the smokestack bottling line, and that's where I met Stephen Powell for the first time, our brewmaster at Boulevard, and just kind of got to know him a little bit. And over the next few months, I got fired from the full-time job I had as a bar manager, ironically.
Okay.
And I called Steven and said, hey, I want to go full-time for you. I'll do anything you want. I'll clean the floors. I'll make you lunch. I really don't care. I just want to do something for you full-time. And I interviewed for a bottling line job, and he said maybe 2-3 years down the road that could turn into a full-time position. Well, the very next day, Tuesday, March 26th at 6:25 p.m., I got a call from Stephen Powell, and he said, hey, I had a brewer give notice today, and I'd like to give you that job instead. Is that okay?
Yeah, I guess that was probably a pretty good trade. Yeah.
And he goes, I'm not kidding. I'll see you Monday, brewer. And I've been working for Stephen ever since.
And now, so you're one of probably several brewers there at the brewery. What's the team like there? How many people work every day to brew the stuff that you guys put out?
Yeah, we have 13 guys that are brewers, and we're all very specialized within that. So there are 4 of us that actually work on the brew house full time. We have a couple guys that are in filtration, and then we have a couple guys in the cellar, monitoring fermentation, yeast handling, dry hopping, that sort of thing. We have 2 guys that oversee the barrel aging program and packaging of our 750s, and then we have a couple lead brewers, and then Steven's our brewmaster. So we have what seems like a lot of people, but for the amount of beer that we're putting out, it's really not that many people. We're kind of a bare bones crew for the amount of beer that we're making.
And that sounds pretty similar to most of the craft brewers, at least in Oklahoma. They don't put a whole lot of money into staffing because I think they're trying to turn over as much beer as they can and not have to worry about paying for all the people to do it.
Right. I mean, I think the really nice thing about Boulevard, and I think the really nice thing about any company, is they really believe in the power of the human capital. And I think if you invest in your people and make the people feel like they're part of something bigger than they are, then a lot of the other stuff really falls into line.
So what is your specialty there from day to day?
I work on the brew house, and actually right now I'm on the overnight shift. I'm off today. I'm actually in the car headed up to a beer fest in Omaha, but typically I'd be there from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. Brewing beer. We brew 24/5, 24/4.5, depending on what the brewing schedule's like that week.
Yeah. Well, let's talk. You talked about the you said, the massive amount of beers that you guys put out. Just kind of talk about what you've seen in the growth of Boulevard as a company in general. I mean, it seems like every year you guys are coming out with more and more products, different variety of stuff. And I just imagine, the volume there. I mean, if you look at the numbers, 10th biggest craft brewery, I guess, by volume in the country. Is it just hectic and crazy right there now for you guys?
It's really neat. We're kind of two breweries in one, and here lately we're kind of smokestack beers are really taking off for us. When I started in 2008, it was just a few months after smokestack beers were released to the public. I think it was late fall 2007 is when those came out, and it was really neat dichotomy. We're this brewery that made a ton of wheat beer. We made some pale ale and some porter, but really not much in the way of higher end, esoteric.
Maybe what you would call
beers,
artisanal type beers.
As the market shifted and as people are willing to spend a little bit more on a bottle of beer, we're really seeing a huge growth in smokestack beers. Tank 7, our farmhouse dry hop saison is really blowing up for us. It's really neat to see how that beer does when we go into a new market. We just rolled out in Boston and the DC area, and people in those cities, great beer culture there.
Yeah.
Are really digging Tank 7 in the smokestack series. But it's all about, controlled growth, I think. You see sometimes breweries expand into new markets, and then they're out of beer in that new market. And we really try to only go to places where we know we can support the beer and keep beer on the shelves or on tap walls,
Well, and that's good to hear, because we've had, recently in Oklahoma, I should say, Avery pulled out because they had pretty much, busted through their capacity ceiling for being able to stock their own shelves, even in the Colorado area. And so it's good to know that people are thinking about that, and making sure that you can have a steady supply to the customers who go into the liquor stores and stuff like that. If you mentioned the Farmhouse Ale, I mean, that is one of my favorites. I think it goes great with pizza, but it probably goes great with a lot of stuff. Speaking towards the whole smokestack series, is that sort of like an ingrained philosophy with you guys, that you want to push the envelope and you want to do these collaborative beers and bigger beers and more artisanal beers? Is that something that's a big priority for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we want to be cool. Just for ourselves, but also we want people to be excited about our beer. I think for a long time, Boulevard was known as making, really solid sessionable beers. But I think people out there, in the beer forums kind of thought that we were afraid of hops, or thought that we were afraid to really take risks. So it's kind of cool to reinvent yourself. And part of that is also fun for the brewers. I love my job. I get to say that I make beer for money every day of the week.
Right.
But it's really cool to go in and brew beers that I get excited about drinking, and beers that I see people getting excited about. Tank 7 is one of my favorite beers to brew. It's a real pain in the butt, manual labor sort of beer. But the brew house smells amazing when you throw in that late Amarillo charge into the kettle in the whirlpool. And it's I don't know. I tell people it's kind of like, if you like cheeseburgers, it's like eating a cheeseburger inside a cheeseburger. Right. I go pour myself a little bit of Tank 7 to just have a little bit of sip when I throw those late hops in. It's just a really, really cool experience to have Tank 7 while you're brewing Tank 7.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned, you kind of hinted at how there was maybe, you said in the past, a reputation that you guys weren't hop forward necessarily, but that gives us a great chance to transition to talk about a couple of your newer beers that are coming out. And one that's already on the shelves is the 80 Acre Hoppy Wheat Beer. And I've had that, and I can tell you it packs a great hop punch. Talk about that beer a little bit and what you guys are hoping to accomplish with that.
Yeah, I mean, that beer is, I think that's kind of the ideal beer that you look for from a brewery. It's completely homegrown from the brewers and cellarmen. One of our cellarmen who's been with us over 10 years, Alex Rodriguez, no relation to the baseball player, of course.
That's right.
Really likes wheat beer, but one day he's like, man, I like this wheat beer, but what could I do to make it even better? And we had a small amount in a little tank that we dry hopped. I think it was Falconer's Flight, the hop blend that was released a while ago, was the first ever dry hopping of the wheat beer. And we thought it was really cool that we had this really drinkable beer that also had this really cool hop flavor and aroma without the bitterness that you'd find in an IPA. So I think we took it to a couple festivals, and it really caught on, and it was really, I think it's kind of the way you want to create beer, is that we tried it out and people really, really liked it and started demanding it, and we realized this is probably something that we should move forward with. So we did, several test versions of it. I think we ended up doing 6 or 7 different versions before we finally arrived at the version that's on shelves and in kegs right now.
Yeah. Another new beer that is, I guess, due to be out on shelves soon, and you'll have to correct me, I'm not sure if this is a re-release or a first-time release, but the Reverb Imperial Pilsner.
Yeah, I would call it a new beer, kind of.
Okay.
I mean, it's not exactly the same as what we brewed with Jean-Marie Rock, but the recipe is, very, very similar. Back in, I think it was 2008, we had Jean-Marie Rock, who's the famed brewmaster from Orval. He and Stephen Powell's are buddies, and they got together and decided they were going to collaborate on a beer. And we got really excited. We're like, wow, the brewmaster from Orval is going to come. What are we going to make? We're going to make an Imperial Pilsner. And we thought that was such a shock that, these 2 great Belgian brewers wanted to make this Imperial Pilsner.
Because
but the story was that Jean-Marie Rock, years and years ago, worked at a brewery called Lamott, where he made this big Pilsner. And for the past 30 or so years, it was a beer that he'd been brewing in his head. And, he never really had the chance to brew a lager at Orval. So he came over and brewed that beer with us. And we thought it was time to bring that beer back out again. So we renamed it Reverb. But it's definitely a callback from that Jean-Marie Rock beer that we brewed back then. It's all Pilsner malt, and it's all Saaz hops. It's a really simple recipe, but I think it creates a really cool, complex beer.
And that's not a natural, when you start playing like word association, you don't say Imperial and Pilsner probably at the same time.
Right, yeah.
Is that
a lot of the local beer guys are kind of mad at us? Like, why are you going to make this Imperial Pilsner? And you just have to trust this, guys. It's a really cool beer, and I think lagers are starting to get a little more respect. At least I hope they are. Because the thing about lagers is not everybody can make a good lager. And I think somebody asked me once, why are you guys making this Pilsner? You make all these other big, great beers. Why make a Pilsner? And I think the reason you make a Pilsner is because you can. It's kind of it's a super technical beer, and we don't want to show off, but it really does show off your technical brewing expertise when you're able to make a beer that's really clean and simple.
Yeah.
We didn't dry hop it, so any flaws from the brewing process when you make a lager, they're going to shine through. But I think this is a really nice beer.
See, now you're making me a little bit nervous for the Oktoberfest I was going to try to brew this weekend.
No, don't be nervous, man. No.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. You talk so much about collaboration for that beer. That's not the first collaboration beer you guys have done. There's been, I don't know precisely how many, but several collaboration beers, right?
We've done 3 so far.
Okay. What is it about? Is that something that you guys would like to continue doing down the line here? Or what do you like about doing the collaboration beers?
I think it's something we're going to continue. We've had a lot of fun with it. I think a lot of the collaboration beers we do are a little bit selfish, but at the same time, we have to think about beers that we can sell. It'd be really awesome if we could all just say, I just make beer to make beer, but at the end of the day, it is a business. We have to sell the beer. But the cool thing about collaborations, and especially the ones we've done, Jean-Marie Rock coming over from Orval is amazing. And then collaboration number 2, we brewed a white IPA with Deschutes out of Bend. And all of us just have, tremendous respect for the beer those guys make. And it was really cool to sort of create a new style of beer. And then collaboration 3 with Pretty Things Beer and Ale Project out of Somerville, Massachusetts, was just this completely out of left field choice for people, I think. I think a lot of people in the Midwest had never heard of them, but then when they did some research, they realized that these guys, Dan and Martha Paquette, really have some pretty heavy street cred in the beer geek world. But it was really cool to kind of go out there and pick a brewery that people really don't know much about.
Well, that's pretty cool. Definitely, I think, everyone can get behind that kind of creativity. And, in the end, it just makes the beer scene better.
I think so, man. I think I think if you have fun and you make beer with good people, you're going to end up with good beer. And Dan and Martha Paquette are just really super awesome people. We met them at a beer festival in Boston, and I introduced myself and said I was from Boulevard and that I'd heard crazy things about their beers, and I needed to find out if it was true. And I just tasted every beer down the line, and they were great. And they came over to our booth, and all night long we were sending people back and forth to each other's booths. And
Yeah.
Later that night we ended up around a table in a bar, eating some cured meats and cheese and drinking beer. And our vice president of operations offhandedly suggested we make a beer together. And everybody said, yeah, we should do this. And we came back to the brewery, and our steering committee, which I'm not a part of, thankfully, again, just a worker bee, they had a meeting, and everybody agreed that it was totally crazy, but something that we should do.
Well, and obviously you guys are pretty happy with the result there. Now let me ask you. I don't know what you can reveal, because I know there's a protocol, with craft breweries, and they like to kind of keep things in-house before they have, label approval and all these things that you have to jump through. But can you give us any kind of hints as to maybe new collaborations or new beer styles that might be coming down the pike from you guys?
I don't think we have any collaborations in the work. We try to do, one a year. So I honestly can answer, I don't know of any collaborations that we have coming. But we do have some test beers we're playing around with. We brewed we're calling it a test ginger session beer.
Okay.
So we made a small Belgian Saison that we hopped exclusively with saws. And then we actually added fresh lemongrass and ginger to the fermenter after the beer was done fermenting. We bought the Jack. Is it the Jack LaLanne? Is that the guy?
Yeah.
It's a crazy juicer. We bought that juicer and ran ginger root and lemongrass through it and put it in the beer, and that's on tap in our tasting room right now. And I think we're going to continue to experiment with session beers. I think that might be kind of the unexplored frontier in beer right now, and I think a lot of people are getting onto that. Not so much in the Midwest yet, but I think that's something we're going to continue exploring for a while to see if we can get a home run there.
Yeah, I think that we may see kind of a kickback to session beers, because you can only go so high, you can only pay so much for one glass of beer at the bar before you kind of say, I wouldn't mind having like 2 or 3 glasses of beer at the bar tonight. And I think that's where that session philosophy definitely, pays off.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you if you guys are kind of aware of the growth that we've seen in our craft beer market here in Oklahoma. I mean, from 2008 till now, there's been a pretty solid growth pattern with new breweries forming. Just recently here, we had a beer cooperative open up, and they're hosting 3 different brewers there. Are you guys noticing what's happening with your neighbors down in the south?
Definitely, yeah. I've had some beers from some of the breweries down there. I did a little bit of research just to make sure I knew, what's going on, and it's really neat to see how many breweries you guys have as compared to how many we have in Kansas City. If you look to St. Louis, they're absolutely exploding right now. I think they have more than 24 breweries operating within an hour of St. Louis, and I'm kind of jealous of that. And as I did some research and kind of reading about what's going on with you guys, I have to admit I'm a little bit jealous. It's a really cool trend, and I think we're getting there too. But it'd be neat to one day be able to go visit 7 or 8 breweries in Kansas City like you guys can visit 3 or 4 or 5 in Oklahoma City right now, right?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely something that's grown big time here in the past couple of years, and I know that when I go to talk to the brewers and stuff like that, it's the nicest guys. There's such camaraderie there, and I imagine it's probably the same, between the breweries, not just from the brewers and their fans.
Oh, totally, yeah. And that's the other thing I miss, or I wish we had in Kansas City, is that camaraderie. St. Louis has they have a St. Louis Brewers Guild, but it's not so much a guild that's focused on legal interest and making sure that everybody's getting fair treatment, but it's more of let's hang out and have fun and figure out how to market this as a collective. I mean, there's definitely that camaraderie. That's what's really cool about the beer industry. Is we, especially as brewers, don't view each other as competition. We're kind of insta friends. You meet a guy, hey, I'm a brewer, oh, me too. Let's hang out, and everything's usually pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I know we can get obviously plenty of Boulevard in Oklahoma and tall grass. I know we have Marshall going up that way. Mustang is going up that way. I'm hoping for the rest of our guys to get on that train and send stuff up I-35. And hopefully we'll have a pretty good swap meet between Kansas and Oklahoma beers here pretty soon.
It'd be great. I'd love to be able to pick up some of that, the Goza from Chalk.
Yes, that's a good one.
That's a cool beer. Talking about session beers, you really don't see a lot of those being brewed today, and I ended up with a bottle of that. That's a really cool beer.
Yeah, Chalk. And I won't just single out Chalk. I mean, a lot of the Oklahoma craft brewers right now are doing really neat things, and there's always something different you can grab on the shelf at the store. So it's a good time. It's a good time to be in craft beer in Oklahoma. Just like I'm probably sure it's a good time for you guys up there in Kansas City.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's a pretty good time to be into craft beer just about anywhere you are these days. It's pretty rare that I end up in a town that's just a craft beer wasteland, but I can usually find, several beers that I'm willing to drink for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm going to cut you loose, Jeremy, but I appreciate you taking time to join the podcast today. I know that a lot of my listeners out there will appreciate getting a viewpoint from kind of out of state. So enjoy your travels over to Nebraska today and have a good time at the Beer Fest. And we'll catch up with you later.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, man. That's really cool.
Okay. We'll talk to you later. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Thirsty Beagle podcast today. For all your latest beer news, check out the Thirsty Beagle blog at News OK. And we'll catch you next time.